Hey guys, welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Amir.
I'm Tim.
I'm Jess.
I'm Allison.
And I'm Brian.
And today we're discussing E3 and whether or not the games industry needs an annual spectacle like E3. And the reason I brought this up is, the reason I thought this would be a good thing to discuss is that we have Nintendo doing digital events. As I'm doing that gaming news in 2 minutes thing, I'm realizing that there's really a lot of news coming out every single day, to the point where, like, making it for 2 minutes, even that 2 minutes, it's really difficult to squeeze all the news that comes out. And magazines are done, right? Pretty much.
Well, digital magazines.
Right. So now exactly. Now it's all digital because you can get it. If you could go to IGN, you could go to GameSpot, you could go to Joystick. There's so many sources, and you get all of that news immediately. Trailers immediately. Is it needed for there to be one annual event, one time a year, where they make a spectacle of things and announce everything all at once?
Well, it depends on what the definition of needed is. As far as, do they monetarily need it? Like, can they make money without it? I think definitely. But having that showcase to get the press, to get, and especially for not the big three, because if you look at the most recent, shows, who's really kind of walked away with it like the last 2 years?
Sony.
Yeah. Not last year, yeah, but 2 years ago, no. I was just like, I was gonna say Ubisoft has really had the biggest sort of like the press conference, the kind of get the buzz out there, and whether they live up to that buzz or whether the games get delayed or whatever, that's a different story altogether. But for these other developers, for these other publishers, what venue do they have for this? Nintendo's got a lot of money. They could just do their own thing, and they have been for a while. They've eschewed that sort of big convention atmosphere to an extent. They're still there. But should Sony and Nintendo, or Sony and Microsoft do the same thing? I don't know. I really don't know that it would be wise for them at this point.
Well, I think it's an interesting question overall, really. Is it necessary? Like you said, in terms of needing to make money, probably not. But when you think about E3, and I look back on my childhood, how much I always looked forward to it, and it was just this huge just dump of news that would just get you excited for the rest of the year. Now times have changed a little bit, but I mean, it's sort of like the Super Bowl for video gamers, essentially. To see that completely disappear, I would hate that. I don't want it to go anywhere. Now, is it going to be phased out eventually? Probably to a degree. And we've seen some different things that they've done with E3. Like, I think it was not too long ago they started letting just the public into it. You didn't have to be an industry insider to be able to get into it, and it was too big. They couldn't hold all the people. They had to scale it back down. But I would really like to see it continue in some way. It's probably going to be diminished to a degree, but a lot of it has more to do with, we can get the news. We're not going to be able to go there regardless, so we're going to get our news from the internet websites anyway. So it's really more about the industry insiders and these developers and publishers being able to show to the media what they're able to do, and then in turn it comes to us. So I think in that regard it's something that's probably going to stick around for a little while, or at least should.
And if you think about it, too, it's almost like it's a direct way for Microsoft and Sony Nintendo to compete with one another, because they're going to have to try to outdo each other. There's no way around it. Last year, Sony trolled Microsoft. Oh, they got him so good, and it was good with their whole, with the commercial at the end where it's like, hey, here's how you share your games on PS3. Or 4, excuse me, PS4. And they just hand it. They do that. They can one-up on each other.
Yeah.
And it makes it more interesting and more fun. For me, I thought it was hilarious, and it made me want a PS4 way more than Xbox One, even though I generally consider myself more of a Microsoft person.
For me, it's like what Tim was talking about. I always remember the days when I was a kid. You'd sit down and you watch like the 4-hour press conferences with all the trailers that would just roll and roll and roll.
I still do.
And that's, yeah. And I think it makes up for, we always know that summer's usually pretty lackluster for games, so you always just look forward to what they showed at E3. It's like, oh, but we got this coming out, and we just keep rewatching those trailers until the fall hits when the games
Yeah, it gives you something to look forward to.
I guess, and I looked at it in a different light, because it's like, you know, I look at the films industry, and sometimes I compare the film industry with the games industry, and I'll, especially now that there's such a narrative in games.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because in the film industry, they'll have a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
They won't have a convention for a trailer, or you know, like a place where they'll, like, all the big names will just show up and they'll just show a whole bunch of like premieres all at once. They'll all do it separately. The one thing is that in the film industry, it's post-production. It's after it's come out, after it's been successful, after you see what it is, then they have their award shows. And then you see who won the awards, you get those clips from it, and then it's kind of like, that's kind of like the reward for job well done.
I think arguably Sundance Film Festival can kind of be like that for like indie films and things. They'll preview them at Sundance, and then you'll see the reviews and stuff, and then it might come out into theaters like 3 or 4 months later. As far as like indies and little documentaries and stuff like that.
And then for video games, I feel like it's kind of in the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're working on, and here's a trailer.
Here's a little taste.
Really, here's a little taste or whatever. Everybody goes and buys it, and you don't hear about it anymore. And then we do have the video game awards on Spike TV, right? Like, and I mean, now it's not even VGA anymore; it's VGX. I don't know what the X is supposed to stand for. I guess they just thought X was cool, but
it's edgy.
But
in the year 20X,
can't help it.
But I know. But the thing is, with the VGA awards, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but sorry, VGX. It almost feels like it's not. I mean, yeah, it's earned. I think every single developer that makes a game deserves to get credit for, you know, kicking ass for so many years and coming out with something that belongs on an award show. But it doesn't seem credible. Sometimes you'll see somebody when you're like, no, I don't see that at all. And not just like on, you know, not just like a personal opinion, but you'll see it like brought, like a whole bunch of people talk about it, and there'll be a controversy like, oh, well, they supplied the world premiere at the show, so they, you know, it doesn't seem like it's legitimate, like an Academy Awards or an Oscars. It's also really expensive to do an E3. Like, I understand that that's, you know, to promote your stuff, but, and then if you look at that, it's like Sony, and this was another thing that spawned it. It was like, not only is Nintendo doing the digital event, right, and they're not even, like, they just have a booth at E3 and then they do the digital event on the internet, and that seems to work, right? Well, Microsoft didn't, well, I mean, if they had content to show, but Sony and Microsoft, they revealed their consoles. Typically that was an E3 thing.
Yeah.
And instead of that, they announced their consoles prior to E3 and then showed you everything else that their consoles are going to do and kind of added to it at E3. Which means they spent twice as much money, right?
Well, yeah.
So
maybe.
But they control the 24-hour news cycle. Like, they get the attention for that. But I think it comes back to, well, first to your point, I mean, there are film festivals, and there are, like, huge media junkets for these big films, and they do worldwide tours, and they have, you know, openings and premieres and all that kind of stuff before you have a wide release to drum up that, you know, and whatever the promotional campaign, you know, is. It does seem like it has been a while since we've seen, and I don't know if it's because of how quickly the publishers need to move from game to game, but it seemed like advertisements for games would last a lot longer, would stick around on air for a lot longer after, you know, like I think it was when Smash Brothers came out way back in the N64, that commercial where all the Nintendo characters are just punching each other over that hill was for weeks after the game was available. Was just played over and over and over again. But you don't really, unless it's like a Call of Duty, you know, or a Battlefield, you just don't really see that anymore. And so to a certain extent, yeah, there is that sort of hype, and we see it in, but that's the thing, if you look at the sales numbers, both in films and in video games, it's that first week, like that opening. That's where all the money gets made. films seem to have perhaps a little more longevity in a lot of cases.
Yeah, because it's a transition from theater to disc and on.
Exactly. You've just got your one sort of opportunity to release, and there it is. There's not really another market for the game as far as there's not a whole nother secondary platform necessarily for the same game. I mean, we have portables.
Well, arguably anymore, it can be like DLC.
Yeah.
Will bring people back to buy another game.
Yeah.
I think I've even seen commercials for DLC and stuff.
Oh yeah. GameStop does a lot of them actually. It's all one for Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing I think is interesting, and you sort of, or Brian sort of touched on it. The console press conferences, the release conference, if you will. I think Sony did theirs in February of 2013.
Yep.
That was a huge event, and they had announced that they were going to have a big show, and you assumed, I think everybody sort of assumed that it was going to be the PlayStation 4, but there were so many other things, like, will it even be called the PlayStation 4? What is it? What's it going to be? And in terms of the timing, I think it's really important that they were able to get their name out there and get their new console on everybody's minds and have everybody talking about it before Microsoft was able to do it.
Yep.
And then by the time that E3 actually came around, man, they were ready to go. They had everybody prepped, everybody just thinking about it, and started loading us up with information. I was excited. And then, we had the release later on in the year, so just sort of the timing and the way those things come across, I think, is really important too.
Yeah. Thinking about it, that's really smart too. If they just kind of give a hint as to what it's going to be. Oh, this, and we can talk about Valve mentioning they're not even going to E3 this year, are they?
I think they are.
I'm actually not sure. They weren't, but at any rate, they can make a mention of something and then at E3 reveal it, which is actually really smart because if they, Sony barely mentioned that there was, or hinted that there was going to be another console. Everybody knew the Xbox. What was it? The 720 is what its little code word was. Everybody knew that was coming out. Weren't so positive about the PS4. They hinted at it, and then it got people excited. So getting that many people excited got more of attention on, for everything else that Sony was releasing. Not just for the PS4, but for the Vita and titles for the PS3 still.
Well, that's the thing. You're getting people excited for an event. Mm-hmm. Does it necessarily have to be E3? That's the thing. Like,
yes.
We have
done. Okay. Discussion over. Thanks. We'll see you guys next week.
Well, that's the thing because, it's kind of like this is part of the thing that I don't understand about the industry. There's a lot of things that just don't make sense. It's almost like they want to play tug of war with each other's profit margins, because you have everybody at E3 part of the spectacle. And then we have this thing of who won E3, right? Either it's a game publisher or it's a hardware manufacturer. But then we also have that in games releases. We already know as gamers that the big releases are going to come out in March and October. And even now that we were like, oh, it's finally going to be over, we're going to have games coming out year-round, all of a sudden everybody's like saying, oh, no, we're delayed until October. And already I have October 21st in my head as a day that's going to have a ton of big releases. So people are made of money. I can't go and spend $300 in a day just on games, right?
And then you don't have the time to play them all anyway.
And then they complain about the used game market, not realizing, like, this is exactly why it's happening, because when I go into the store, I'm going to buy one game for $60, and then I'm going to wait till I beat it, and then I'm going to buy another one. And if it doesn't have the DLC or something like that, or something that really makes me need to buy it new, and even if I do, I'll get it at a discount somewhere.
Yeah.
But that kind of pushes me towards the used market because somebody else has played it and beat it. I'm just going to go and buy it used because it's a lot cheaper now. And I kind of feel like that's what E3 does. In my opinion, I feel that it would have been much better at least now it would be a much better format if they had that post award show, and we took that step. You know, where it was like, it's not about selling us the games because you guys are doing that year round. Marketing is almost free. Anything that you do on top of it, like we heard about the Destiny big marketing budget, Grand Theft Auto 5, which you corrected me the other day with their big marketing budget.
No big deal.
So yeah, they have that marketing, but it's not really, if you think about it, it's not necessary. If you're going to come out with a big name or you have like this really big project with really strong developers behind it, the media is going to report on it. Joystick, IGN, GameSpot, Polygon, they're all going to jump on that because it brings them revenue, it brings them the clicks. And, of course, that coverage brings that free marketing to the game. Why compete to market in one spot?
I think one thing that we sort of need to touch on as well is, the people who play video games are pretty tech savvy for the most part. If you look at gamers in general, we're on the internet a lot. We're constantly looking up videos for, and not just video games, but, really just anything. So when you're talking about the necessitation for spending a lot of money on marketing, it's probably not so necessary. And probably not so necessary to spend so much on E3. And it's going to change. I mean, just look at what the internet's done to news and the way it's adapted, how we interact with people, media in general. That's all going to change. And E3 should change with it. I don't think it should just go away.
Oh, no.
And I don't think it ever will, really. Yeah. Hopefully not. Fingers crossed.
Never
I love
say
this
never.
E3.
We never say never again. Yes. The thing is about
Bad, yeah.
about the From Russia with Love. All right. To try to bring it back to games. The thing about games, though, is we can't just look at
Not related to two. Continue. I'm sorry.
You're losing your train of thought.
No.
okay.
No. Yeah, actually, no. James Bond's got his watch and he's cutting a hole in the floor of the train since you brought up Goldeneye. Anyway, with the little anyway. So it's at the intersection of not just entertainment but technology, and if you look at gadgets and and computers and all that kind of stuff, we have another exposition very similar to what the E3 conference does, and that's the Consumer Electronics show in Las Vegas in January. And so that's where, and really, you still have people coming to it because you have a lot of these smaller parties who are trying to, make a name for themselves. And, if that means that we have 50 different companies with new cell phone cases, okay, but we're also going to have some really interesting niche things where these folks have cobbled together all the money that they have, and this is their marketing campaign. It's like we're going to go out there where we know people are going to be, and that's the whole point behind these expositions, right? Is to have a space where it's just like, look, all of the cool things are going to be together in one place. Come see them and report on them, so that you don't have to fly out to, because as much as the reporters moan about, it's, you walk miles and you have to go to this thing and then that thing, and then you come back and you're just sick and ill and all that kind of stuff. Well, to a certain degree, it makes a lot of sense for the media, because then they go to one place, they have a team of people, and then they cover all of these different areas of the industry all at once. Versus, okay, we got to fly these guys to Tokyo, and then we got to fly these guys to Seattle, and we got to fly these guys over to a small area in the UK, and then we got to think about this dev team working on Activision's working. These guys in Poland are working on this new project, so we're going to send you over to Poland for a little while.
Activision Poland,
and so and they try to cut down on that a little bit, because we do have Tokyo Game Show, right?
Right,
and we've got
it's kind of faded. Really
well,
faded.
it's really. It seems like it's kind of internalized. The Tokyo Game Show has said, well, we call it Tokyo Game Show, so let's make it about Japanese games.
It's just Japanese stuff.
Yeah,
usually.
exactly. So the North American coverage is kind of, skewed away, but, Germany has really started to gain a lot of steam, no pun intended, in the games, industry, and they have, is it Gamescom is what? Gamescom, yeah, in Germany. I think that's right. So, and that's another big reveal. Sony did a lot of their Vita. I think they announced the Vita there, actually, if I'm remembering correctly, which I may not be. It's possible.
Also, sort of to what you were saying about these smaller companies, I mean, indie games are really taking over the market right now. And, something like the PAX conventions, PAX East.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those
PAX
are
is great.
extremely dedicated to indie games, though, so it gives these developers a chance
That's
to.
what I was going to say. How much would you actually hear about these indie games
Yeah.
or these smaller developers without something huge like this? I was thinking, like, how excited would we be about, like, The Last Guardian and stuff like that if we hadn't seen trailers at E3 and stuff like that?
And
It
how
would
disappointed
probably
would we
just
be
get-
at the
Yeah.
same
I
time?
mean, if they just released it on a news site, you'd probably just look over it being like, oh, what's this?
Last
And
Guardian,
just,
unless
you
it
know.
said Ico and Shadow, then you'd be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. But if you didn't see that,
Yeah.
you'd just look over it. That's a good point.
The Last Guardian's going to be at E3, by the way. I'm feeling it this year.
I actually, I
is Half-Life
revisited
3.
the trailer.
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen it in years, so I figured
It
maybe
still
I'm
looks
looking
pretty
at
good.
this with
It still looks
rosy-colored
pretty.
glasses. Actually, I looked at it and I was like, I don't care anymore.
Nah.
Yeah.
That's hurtful.
Yeah.
You know?
I looked
Chicken
at it,
leg monster, man.
watched it all the way through for the first time, and I was just like, this still looks like the feathers on the.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
that's,
feathers, yes.
And you know that thing's gonna die.
Yeah.
That's going to be so hard.
It's gonna be heartbreaking. You're gonna die with it, but you know it's
like-
going down.
I'm getting that never-ending story vibe, and I'm just like, I'm digging this. Yeah, exactly.
Well, to me, it's less about the trailer and more about just the team behind it. I haven't seen anything from.
Right.
Is it Team Eco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything from that since Shadow of the
No.
Colossus. And
And that's the thing. Yeah, in the time that they've been working on Last Guardian, Naughty Dog has released 3 Uncharted games and Last of Us. And they're just, stellar, top of the line. It's just like, well, where is this Last Guardian? And, there's a lot of, I think we'll see something. We've got to see something. This E3, there'll be something, either a cancellation, like in a back room somewhere. It's just like, we're done.
By the way-
This
Well,
team
that
is
would be
moving
deflating.
on.
Yeah.
Or they'll do like a whole like Final Fantasy versus 13 is now Final Fantasy 15, where it kind of like morphs into this project became something else.
Yeah.
And this is why you should care, because it has the lineage of this inside of it. It's like it's got the DNA. It's a new story. It's completely different, but we've got a lot. I can see something like that
Yeah,
happening.
definitely.
Does anybody remember the actual year? Like, was it 2007 that The Last Guardian was announced?
I think
No,
That
it
seems
was,
early.
It was later than that.
I want to look it up.
it wasn't very long after the PlayStation 3 release, I want to say. And that was
Yeah,
06.
that's what
I
I'm
feel
thinking.
like
'Cause
it was, like,
2006 was when, obviously, the
Yeah.
PS3 was...
Yeah.
I feel like it was 2008 or 2009.
Oh, yeah, that's
I don't think it was that late. I think it was before, like, the big AAA titles for PS3.
Yeah.
Which started in 2008.
Yeah.
I think it was before that.
Right around
I mean,
that
but
time.
I'm almost positive it was after that, but we'll wait for him to Google.
how much are we betting?
I like being right.
Oh, great googly moogly.
Oh, please tell us what we made.
I think going back to the whole, if you want to compare it to the Oscars, if you think about the two different types of mediums, film and video games, you can get into a film, you're not interacting with it. And I think that's
Right.
part of it, too, is that it's not just them showing the games, it's them showing you how you're going to play it.
Well, your Wi-Fi said no internet for you, so
Oh, man.
boo.
You should call
All
tech
right.
support.
I will.
they'd be here in 20 minutes.
And don't take it personally if they're lisping at you, though. You might have just had an incident. Right then, right at that moment. Don't hold it. Don't take it personal. Okay.
She's
All right.
trying to get her tooth back in. I mean,
That's
You were
But
saying
anyway.
before you were saying before about having to fly everywhere, and that made sense. You know,
Yeah.
like, okay, so the media now has to fly all over the place to get this information, which technically is not necessary.
not necessary. But
I mean,
they still do
mostly
it.
what goes on in E3 is what? Trailers, right? Trailers, this is what we're coming out with, here's what it looks like.
Hands-on, getting something hands-on
But
is
see,
very
the hands-on
important.
doesn't
though.
really work. Because the hands-on can also be done, they ship copies of games to the media, like, here's a demo.
yeah, but that can also, it's a lot easier, E3 is live. It's a lot easier just to edit. Oh, we messed this up. We need to go ahead and just take that out and redo it again until we get it right.
Yeah.
Doing it live is a lot more. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and
we messed up.
There's more salesmanship to it as well. I mean, if you're sitting there at somebody's booth and you've got your hands on their game, and they're going to be selling the game to you. If you come into a problem, they might say, "Oh yeah, we've already got that worked out." That's obviously not going to be in there. So I don't think you want to completely remove that. But again, is it completely necessary? Are there ways around that? Definitely.
Yeah. Cheaper ways.
Skype.
Well, but I mean, if you're going to have an event, like it's going to be a Sony event or a Microsoft event or a Nintendo event, right? like E3 is one of the few places where if you cover games, then you can get hands-on time with a Sony game and then go to a Microsoft game and then talk to the developers for this Nintendo game and do that all in a day. And you get it done, and then you take 45 minutes or whatever. You type up your little news blurbs, and then you ship it out to the internet. And you let everybody read it. You get hits for your site. You get advertisements, and then you're back on the floor.
Well,
Otherwise you're focused in on those particular events, and it's sort of that these guys are vying for the 24-hour news cycle, right? Like we know that that's why Sony did their announcement for the PS4 early, and then Microsoft waited. They tried to distance themselves. I said that's the kindest way to put it. The general thinking is just like they're just wetting themselves, just like, oh God, what do we got to do? So they're vying for that 24-hour news cycle, but at the same time, E3 is where it is kind of that sort of gladiatorial. We don't really see that elsewhere. I mean, in the technology industry, you do have, you are seeing that where you have events competing with each other. Like you normally have, Apple usually makes a big announcement around the time of CES because Apple doesn't go to CES. You know what I mean? Anytime there's like the Intel Developers Forum for like the little processors, you've got AMD as the other competitor. Always has a little, we're announcing our new platform for blah blah blah. So they're all vying for that. E3 is unique in that they're all basically in the same 24-hour cycle, trying to get as many eyeballs as possible. So that they can, but I don't know. What is the purpose of that, though? What do you think?
See, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing I was saying. It's like it's there and it's competition live in front of everybody, right? And so that feeds it a bit, where you're like you want to be the one that wins. Like you said, Super Bowl, it's perfect because it's basically like all the NFL teams at once, all playing against each other, or like an all-star game, basically.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't. I mean, I understand it, and it's cool to be the winner of E3, and you want to be the winner because they have those awards, right? Like, they have awards like Best at E3 and stuff like that. And
you put it on the box.
Exactly, you put that on the box, and that helps you kind of sell it. And I understand that, but there's nothing for post. Like, there's nothing for after the fact, after the releases, and it's gotten to the point where it's kind of a cycle, right? I mean, like we know what's going to happen. We know that everything before E3 has released. Right? Everything that they said was going to release, we're getting really close. E3 is around the corner. Yep. Everything that they said was going to released from last E3. Well, now here we are at E3. They're going to say everything that's going to release. Somebody's going to win E3, and then it'll start all over. And all the games that we see now will probably come out sans The Last Guardian and and other things that may get canceled or just don't work out or for whatever reasons they have. But the expectation is that if they're going to announce it this June at E3, before the next June, it will already be out. It used to not be the case. They used to kind of build it up. Sometimes it would be multiple E3 years or there would be like multiple things going on. Like for like even the PS3, it was originally announced in 2005 as a prototype.
Yeah.
And then it was released just before that E3 in 2006, and then it was like, okay, here's the final product. But again, we don't have anything for that post-purchase. We don't have anything for, let's say, if
we do next year's E3.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. That starts the marketing. Exactly, that starts the cycle again. It's kind of like watch wrestling. It's kind of like you have WrestleMania, which closes the story for the year. That their whole year of storylines, and then you have the next Monday Night Raw, which will start the next year's storylines. So we have E3 in June, but we don't really have anything, let's say, in May that closes everything that happened last year to say, okay, here's everybody's awards, here's what we really connected with, these are the games that really, it's kind of like I feel like we're just getting the sales pitch. They're spending a lot of money to sell it and win it.
Yeah.
And the majority don't, right?
Well, I mean, is it necessarily on E3 to sort of set up those year-end awards? I mean, I'm not talking about an award show per se, but
Because there's all kinds of video games awards.
Exactly.
shows.
Well, that's where I was.
Yeah.
Well, I was about.
I only know the one.
Kinds. No, there are.
Well, I mean, just for each
dozens
individual
of
couple, like
award
IGN,
shows.
for instance, will put out. It's
okay.
all of
Well,
its
not even
awards
counting
and
the
everything
gaming
like
side.
that.
No, I mean like a live one, where they like actually,
Like a
give
spectacle?
them, something exactly like a spectacle, like E3.
No, well,
I
they
think there's more
do.
than one. I think there's even like a kids one that they do on
Yeah.
like Nickelodeon and stuff.
Whatever it is, I would love for it to be bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not very big affairs. There are there's several, especially like the developers will come together and give like awards for like other developers for the work that they've done. They're not the big galas. Like they are live. Like they get the people together and they go out to do these things. There's not a whole lot of coverage over it though, because I guess partially because the game sites, like you were saying, have their own awards shows, their own awards that they do, and that's what they want to push as a sort of a differentiator. It's like, well, here's our, you've come to know our opinions and our reviews and everything, so you've got websites that you go to us for your gaming news, so here's what we thought about this last year in gaming, and so that's what they're doing. So the reporting on these sort of, award shows, but you're right, there isn't that sort of closing. Christmas is the closest thing that we get to that.
Yeah.
But there is that sort of gap between Christmas and E3 where we have a ton of releases, and then we tend to have this summer drought of games.
Right after E3 too.
Which is
E3 introduces the drought.
Historically, that's when we go ahead and we go play the games that we couldn't play in December because they released all of them, and we couldn't.
And March.
And we couldn't afford all of them in that one day.
All of them. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's why they have to spend so much money on this one last big spectacle, because they know we're not going to have anything for a while.
Is it just to build up
Sort
to
of
the Christmas
But
stuff?
at the same time,
Just-
put trailers and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and getting the extra news for what's going to
Yeah.
happen around Christmas time.
By the way, development on The Last Guardian started in 2007, but it was not officially announced at E3 until 2009.
Shazam.
Thank you.
So there you
Oh,
go.
man.
According to the Wikipedia.
Told you, I was like, I think I recall. Anyway.
So, all right, and this should be another roundtable, a different roundtable topic, but
Oh boy.
Do we need a different table or?
no.
Oh, a different show. Oh, sorry.
I'm saying like
my apologies.
This what I'm about to say kind of deserves its own topic in
Okay.
a way, I think.
All right, cool.
But we have this whole thing where if we look at films, we look at films as artwork, right?
Mhm.
And then video games, we look at it as artwork, but people who are not gamers look at them as toys.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And at one time it was, in the 8-bit era, or maybe even some of the 16-bit era, until we really got deep into the RPG releases. The narratives weren't there, right? It was just casual, and you just played it or whatever.
Yeah, for the most part.
But the fact that we don't have, I know that this topic is supposed to be about E3, but the fact that we don't have an award show, I keep saying that we need an award
Going
show.
back to the award show.
Does it hurt the industry that it's just the sales pitch? Like the public just sees the spectacle that is the sales pitch. This is the tech. This is what we're coming out with. This is everything. But we don't have that end of the year, that end of the line where we say, best voice actor, whatever it is. But being able to actually have a show where they talk about the narrative.
Yeah.
How they were able to touch the emotions of the players and not just interact with them because they're playing, they're just hitting buttons and that's the only interaction. There's a much deeper interaction there. We relate to the characters on the screen, even though they're not real, but we still relate. We still feel those emotions. And I've shed more than a couple of tears on a few games. And I'm not ashamed to say it because we know that games have gotten to that point.
Yeah.
So... Does it, we've said countless times as gamers that maybe the name video game creates that feeling of this is just a toy. And that maybe we needed that new name like the graphic novel, but the fact that we don't have an award show and just have the sales pitch, I feel also kind of hurts it.
I think the media hurts us the most. because every time you have like the mass shootings and stuff like that, what do they go towards immediately?
Yeah.
Oh, he played Call of Duty,
Yeah.
he played Halo, and I think that is still what hurts us the most.
Yeah, probably so.
Is the media and that,
The Sixth House.
Mm-hmm. Kitty agrees.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically just the new music. Because for the long, when Columbine happened, they blamed the music. The kids listened to Marilyn Manson, and he came back and wrote the nobodies about it. But at any rate, it's kind of just the new thing to blame.
Right.
Which
I don't think it's been new, because I still remember reading an article back in the day that blamed Final Fantasy VIII on some kid killing another kid at school or something like that.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat caught a lot of heat back in the day about that too. I mean, that's an issue that's always been around.
Yeah. That's a good point.
My opinion of the question that you asked, does a lack of there being some sort of, I guess, really centralized sort of video game award show, does it hurt the industry? I really don't know how to answer that, because we don't have one.
Yeah.
But the biggest, I mean, I've been sitting here thinking about it since, we've been talking about it, obviously, but I really want one now. Like, I would really love to see what it could do for the industry. And you
take it
mentioned,
seriously.
Yeah, really take it seriously. These are credentials. Like, it's not going to be the equivalent of winning an Oscar, but I guess it could be.
It could be to the person who won it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
group.
for people who are putting that much time and effort into, it's their passion, it's their job, it's their love. Why not give some sort of award, something to signify, you really stepped up and did something that we've never seen before, or that is a cut above everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think
I would
we'll
love to
get
see
to
that
point too, just from how big, how successful things like Last Guardian Last of Us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say,
And,
Last Guardian was very successful.
And like GTA and stuff like that would just how big gaming has gotten recently.
Yeah.
And I've also read somewhere too that MLG, as far as is becoming and being more accepted as a sport,
Mm-hmm.
and and that views, like as far as watching sports online, MLG is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, ratings that they get watching sports online and things like that. And I think it's getting bigger just with gaming getting more popular.
Yeah, definitely.
I have to say, I don't know that it's really the award show, but it's that we don't have a gaming sort of higher body, higher authority to like call out and say.
We don't have the academy of
or like I was thinking, well, who else? Artists like painting and sculpture, artists. They don't have an award show either, but we still consider it art. And that may be because, they kind of used to, right? Like we used to have these big sort of celebrations because that was the entertainment, right? We still have it for music. We have it for movies. We don't really have it for books, but in books we have like awards that come from this sort of centralized body. And maybe that's more so what we, not necessarily like the big kind of flamboyant show like the VGX has become. Like, if we do get a mainstream, legitimate award show along the line of the Academy Awards, it had better not be on Spike. Otherwise,
That's a detriment.
So I think it's that if we got the higher, if we got like David Jaffe and Gabe Newell and some of these guys together to decide or to talk about and have a discussion and say, what. Well, we're just a humble group of developers, and there are some of these groups out there. That's these other awards but they're just not publicized. But to make a big deal of just like, look, we're the people who've been in the industry for a long time, and we're going to look for specific things, and we're going to say, this is the most creative, or this is the best narrative, or something like that, and just give that to that game, and the publisher can, put that sticker on it if they want to, or they can, tell that, when they're going to, they're shopping around for the next project or whatever, they can say, hey, look what we were able to accomplish. Yeah. And I think that actually would be beneficial, because what I'm hearing a lot from not the marketing standpoint so much, but the development side, is that it's very much become not these dedicated teams that work on projects for years and years and years, but a cycle of coders and artists who just go from project to project to project.
Ubisoft,
They
starting to transition into that.
Yeah, they ramp up. These studios ramp up. They hire, get everybody in to meet the deadline, and then they just get rid of everybody, but just a very
and a
small
lot of
core
outsourcing.
team. Yeah.
And
then
yeah,
everybody
if we
freaks out
kind of
about all the
approach
layoffs.
Sorry. Yeah, if we kind of approach it like I'm very impressed with Child of Light, even though I still haven't.
Shouldn't play it on hard.
I'm sorry. Before we started this thing, I was complaining that Child of Light was too long. But I am playing it on hard, and we assume that maybe that's why I feel that
articles to the contrary.
Yeah. No, I mean, whatever. It is what it is. I love it. I just think for what it is, it's too long. I think
it's an RPG. It's too long.
And it's one of those things like as the narrative continues, it keeps making you think that you're at the end, and then another thing happens, and you're like, oh man, I'm still going. It's like, I should just let that be the end.
Some of us are grateful for those feelings.
No, I love it. But sometimes, like if you're on a mission, you're like, I'm going to beat this game because I know I'm at the end. Then it gets deflating. You're like, I'm going to beat this final boss. And then it's like, oh, that wasn't the final boss.
And there's something to be said.
I'm not even halfway through.
There's something to be said for, like I play a lot of RPGs. I've played a lot of like 50, 60, 70-hour RPGs in my life. So to see a game come around that's labeled as a 10-hour RPG, well, that looks quick and easy. I'm going to jump in that, experience it, have a blast, and then get the hell out of there.
That's nothing.
If it's advertised that way and that's why you bought it, you play a demo or whatever, you check it out in the beginning, you say, I like that game. But you don't necessarily, I'm a sort of a completionist, and I think that might be a bit of it for you too, probably flying around.
Yeah.
Looking at everything that you could possibly look at.
Every
Being
corner.
a treasure hunter
it
always takes me twice as long to beat something than
Yes.
everything else.
Yes.
And I just gave up on it too. It had like one of these backtracking side quests. And I was like, like one of those, and I didn't know that it had fast travel. I don't even use the map. I didn't know what that was like. What a dumb map. Who needs this map? It's just a whole bunch of places, and they gray out after I complete something in them. Okay, fine. I didn't even know I had to fast travel, so I was flying through the entire game going back to do this side quest.
I'm like hour 25.
And I was like, really?
Am
I really doing it? And then at some point I was just like, nah, forget it. And I did like a little in-air UE and just flew right back.
Wait, so you actually, so you're not just walking through the whole thing like you do in Skyrim?
You can't get out of light.
Speaking of which, actually, I said I wasn't going to play it until it came out on Vita. Well, it's coming out in Vita like June, July.
Child of Light, right? Yeah, I heard
I
that.
thought you were talking about Skyrim.
No, I'm sorry.
And it's not
sorry.
cross-buy.
No.
It's not cross-buy?
That's fine. I don't care.
It's not cross-buy, and that makes me a little upset.
Because
I would
why
love to
not?
have
It's
it
not
on
an
my
expensive
Vita.
game. You might as well.
Dragon's Crown wasn't cross-buy either, unfortunately. But it might be cross-save.
That was a good game.
So, I mean, if it's cross-save, that's one thing. Well, and MLB The Show, that's not cross-buy. So,
It's also extraordinarily boring.
what, baseball?
Yes.
In general?
In general.
Well,
When you play it.
Sports ball.
See, I can't watch a baseball game. I can't. But I play it and love it. when
Oh,
I
yeah,
play
it's
it,
fun.
because it's so. Once you're playing it, it's totally cerebral.
He's doing this, and I'm
Yeah.
doing
No,
that too.
no, yeah, no. It's you can watch it because you start looking at the mechanics of why the people are doing the things that they're doing and why the delays are there because it's all strategic.
Yeah.
From the batters to the pitchers to the managers,
Messing with the timing.
yeah, and that's all it is because it is all about timing.
But I love it when it happens to me. Like
Yeah.
they'll throw a fastball,
We're talking about
fastball,
physical activity in a gaming show.
and then.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, anyway, and about E3, should have.
Oh yeah, wait a minute. We were talking about E3.
Yeah, all right, fine.
Sorry, we went off on a tangent.
we
But
did.
basically, what I was saying was Child of Light, for example. I was proud of Ubisoft for actually approving something like that. That's pretty awesome. But at the same time, that exact same publisher has 10 different teams around the world working on, what was it? Assassin's Creed. Is it Unity or Freedom Cry? I mean, you have so many Assassin's Creed in the pipeline.
Yeah, they got 2 different projects going right now.
Yeah, I mean, so when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, like you said, like the art part of it is kind of stripped down a bit. And I think if there was an award show, again, the show became about having an award show. If there was an award show, I think it would work out better where they would feel like they're getting to a point where they're getting recognized for more than just the NPD numbers, more than just their sales.
Yeah.
Where it's more about what their artists are doing, and then somebody like Amy Hennig going to EA and working in Visceral Games becomes a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
Even though it's already big now, we say, oh well, she was the creative director for some Uncharted games.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, if she's like the writer, she's not just the creative director and writer. Like there's much more to it. There's a lot more weight to it, and it becomes a lot more important. And many other writers become way more important.
When you approach it that way, it quickly becomes more than just a business.
Exactly.
It really starts becoming more of this art form that more recognizably so. I mean, it's not like it's necessarily changing because of that, but in terms of getting it recognized as an art form, I think that's pretty important as well.
Yeah, and as an adult, I mean, that's what's important to me. I mean, I'll have my times where I'm like, I just want to play a game. I just want to, like Resogun, I just want to sit down and have a good time. Oh, man, this looks awesome.
Geometry Wars.
Yeah.
I just want to sit there and just not think. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, obviously, we have those moments as gamers, but then when there's really something special, something that has that narrative that you really
the same
get
can be
into.
said about like all art forms, though, because there's sometimes where I'm like, I want to watch an in-depth movie, and other times I'm like, no, I want to watch Emperor's New Groove.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I don't want to think. I just want to watch a movie that's stupid
Although
and silly.
Emperor's New Groove is kind of cool.
Oh, it's great. No, it's wonderful. I'm not, but I'm just saying, like, it's just something where I don't have to, like, I can just kind of zone out.
Yeah.
The same can be said for any kind of type of art form.
Yeah. Music's the same way.
Yeah.
When you're driving, you're like, I just want to listen to just some stupid pop music, or or I just want to listen to some classical music, or just I don't have to think about it.
I guess the big question, if we're assuming that an award show would be a good thing, and at least I think that it would be, who's going to do it? And we sort of touched on that a little bit before, but I mean that's really, really important, and it's really hard to fathom a way that something like that would really get springboarded into existence. Like, how does that get started? I mean,
well, obviously, there's a major monetary investment, right? And you would do it because you want the ratings on television. And I think with 160 million install base for just two of the big three, Microsoft and Sony, that's already, like, you're talking about a lot of potential viewers. That's 160 million people that don't have anything like that. And as far as the judges, I liked the whole, getting somebody who's just been in the industry and they're a judge. But I was also kind of thinking, like, we have so many sources, right, for, like, where the news comes from and people that review. I personally, I like reading an IGN review, but I like going to GameSpot because they have the good and the bad for games. So I'll use that first as a guideline to see if I even care to read the review. And then there's, there's just all kinds of places. And, of course, I avoid anything that says official. For review at least. So I mean, like, with all of those resources, why not just have all of those people as the judges? Give them the reward too of being like, hey, you've been reviewing games for so and so years. We'd like for you to be one of the judges.
That's got to be a huge honor.
And then exactly, and that's the thing. The word is honor.
Yeah.
I mean, like, MLB The Show, I was just recently listening to a podcast about, I think it was from IGN, where they said that it might have even been.
I think
Colin,
those podcasts beyond, I believe.
A blank on his last
Colin
name. Moriarty, yeah. So Colin Moriarty had mentioned that he went to visit the guys at San Diego?
Yeah, San Diego, I think that's right.
So he went to visit the guys, and the director has a mattress in his office.
Yeah.
Like, he goes to sleep because they have such a strict deadline. But imagine now that, you sleep in your office, you're this dedicated to your game, and you win a real award, that really means something, and it's not just because we put a premiere on the show, but where it really means something, and you get that kind of reward for it. You get to display that on your mantle. You feel good about yourself.
That's a really good point too, because a lot of what they were talking about right there was how Sony Santa Monica, they're essentially the unsung heroes of the company in terms of, I mean, they're the workhorses. Now, MLB The Show does really, really well. A lot of it having to do with that. There's not very much of very little competition. But the time frame that they have to work on these games, they're just constantly working on them. Constantly.
Yeah, they don't even get readers.
So
they're on a rotation too. Like the WWE Games guys, their dev cycle is 18 months, but it comes out every year. So it's like 18 months is basically like, oh, we don't need the coders at this point because we're already publishing the asset. So, hey, coders, work on our next one. So they're just constantly working nonstop, and where's the reward? And you would think that it would be in the salary, right, in the sales, but they don't see that. They don't see the profit margin. They get paid a salary. So I was looking into, what the the top paid guy would be, which is, I mean, besides the people that are execs of the publisher, that's typically the creative director. And when I looked at that, the average annual salary is 80 to 100,000. It's not really that much for somebody who
think
has
it would be a little more.
mattress in his office.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like a film director is getting way
exactly.
more
yeah.
money.
Compared to
Yeah.
that, yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like, you know, give him something back.
Yeah.
But going back to E3, if that's the case, and let's say we flash forward and somebody says, "Hey, you know, we saw these guys on GameSpin, even though they only have 7 subscribers." Well, I'm the 7th subscriber, and I decided I have a lot of money, so I decided I'm going to make this award show. Flash forward 5 years, now we have this established award show that gets great ratings on a real, you know, on a television network.
Well, will we have television the way we know it in 5 years?
Maybe.
Like, is it going to be? I mean, does it have to
Are
be
you
on
changing the
TV?
topic,
That's the
right?
thing. Well, does it have to be TV in order for it to be serious and successful?
Yes.
Because
Because
so,
you
too.
have to bridge that generational gap.
yeah.
Exactly.
Which is that is the problem that we have. That's why they keep pointing the finger that violent video games cause this, or you know, it's because they look at it like they, you know, just like before, you know, they look at a violent film and they say, oh, that's the reason. Meanwhile, they don't even know about the ESRB ratings,
Right.
or they're not responsible enough to educate themselves on it.
True.
But the generational gap is there, where the people that are the average gamer is 31 or 32 years old now. And you kind of like, even for me, as somebody who's 36, looks at that and that surprises me, even me.
Even the
Yeah.
cat agrees.
You know, give that example to an adult who's 50, and he'll say, "No way," you know, and they still view it as a toy. If you have a legitimate, you know, when somebody asks me why I like games, my dad actually recently asked me, he says, "Oh, why do you still play video games?" And I'm like, well, video games are not what you remember them to be. You know,
Exactly.
it's, you know, there's so much more to it. And to me, and this is what I was trying to say before, like sometimes I want to get into a casual game, but it's really the art that gets me, because I'm an art lover. I'm a musician too.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm listening to the music. I'm amazed at how many, like, I don't think you guys realize that when somebody composes a song, it's already difficult for it to be dynamic. For you to say, okay, here's the chorus, here's the verse, when does it get boring? Some of them are just verse, chorus,
absolutely,
verse.
yeah.
But then there's like that dynamic, somewhere in the middle, something different changes, or there's a solo. There's a different, you have to think of different ways to capture people. And now you have these people composing music, and it has to be layered depending on the action, and what layer comes in is dependent on that action. So you're actually building all of these, like, maybe 50 layers to a song, and then, like, it just gets, you view it as it's getting more intense as the action is coming in, but those are more instruments, more people coming in, and it all fits. And that's just one tiny little aspect of a video game. Then there's the coders, there's the artists, there's the concept artists, and then the people that transition that into the game. There's the animators who are, you know, doing stuff that you see on, you know, in film. Like, we all complain about those scenes in Matrix Reloaded, where you could tell that it was animated and not real. But there's just so much to it, and I think that's the gap we need to bridge. The adults don't see that. They still see a toy. And a toy is not something you invest $500 million in to make, like a Destiny. You know.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I mean, you look at just the video game market in general, and look at how much money gets pumped in and out of that. That's not just a toy. There's so much more to it. I mean, that figure alone, I mean, you're not going to convince anybody with just numbers on a piece of paper.
Right.
But, I mean, that's important to really understand, you know, how big it is, how big of an impact it has on the market.
This is the most talkative my cat has ever been, and it has to be for our first episode.
It's the topic.
Awesome.
The cat
He's
just
into it. He's
likes
like,
the topic.
It's like, yeah, episode number 1, meow.
Well, like E3, which will eventually kind of die out as we know it. It's already gone through one sort of metamorphosis, but like E3 will die one day and become something else.
Yeah.
the older generation will die off. And then it will just be us, and we'll be the old fogies telling these people that, look,
One
look,
day we
the
need to
virtual
use a controller.
spike, the virtual spike is going to damage your brain. You need to spend less time in your head and more time out here. Play video games.
All right,
Well
so
said, well
we're
said.
actually getting to the closing moments. So since we're at the closing moments, maybe a couple of closing statements, or actually the answer. Where do you stand on it? Does E3? We'll go around the table. Around the table.
Around the world.
Um,
Around the world.
it totally wasn't even
Saw what
planned.
you did there.
The cat liked that too.
Yeah.
Your cat likes everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's gonna
The
get
cat
it.
loves this episode.
Yeah.
What do you think? E3, does the industry need it? Or do consumers need it?
I think the industry as a whole does. I'm basically just going to recap what I was saying earlier.
To summarize.
Yeah. And it, like what I touched on earlier, the media itself, where I get my news, I want them to be there. I want them to engage in this big event where everything is, and it's not just about that. I mean, there's a nostalgic thing for it, for me, to it as well. If E3 died, I'd be pretty sad.
Yeah.
I would miss it
too.
I want it in some form, fashion. Just call it E3. I don't care. But it's going to adapt. It's going to evolve and change, and it has to. It's got to stay relevant.
I think that if the consumers need it, the industry does. So it kind of all depends on us. Because if consumers say, we need to see all of these at one time, they're going to have to provide it. I mean, I guess they don't have to, but it would be stupid for them not
Yeah.
to, especially if we're already used to it.
Yeah.
Somebody will.
I do think, I kind of agree with the award ceremony, we keep calling it that, but some kind of recognition overall in a big way to say, hey, this is not just for your 5-year-old kid anymore. It's not just a Super Nintendo that, where your princess is another castle, whatever. It's not just that anymore. It is an art form, and it's something that you can get more than involved in, and there needs to be some kind of recognition for the effort that's put into that.
Yeah.
So I think that, does E3 need to exist? As long as the consumers want it, it does. And I do. So
I love E3. I want to have it. And the reason I kept beating in that award show thing was because before we started the show, I was thinking about it. And to me is, once you have that award show, once you're giving the recognition for those games, I think that the sales pitch can stand on its own. There's definitely enough media outlets out there to cover it. I think that they could push that with the internet and broadband. People could just see the trailers. They could get excited for it. They could do, their own marketing campaigns on the internet, and everybody would love it. And then at the end of the year, you give everybody their awards for really, a complete game. And that's where the spectacle is. The spectacle is these guys did it, these guys made it, and they won the world. And I think that's way more important than winning E3. And that's where I stand on that.
Definitely.
I think it's important and necessary, even just for the marketing and the advertising that everybody gets from their trailers and things like that. And I think that to a lot of people, the stamp on the cover of the game saying, best of E3, won this many, awards or whatever from E3 is important to a lot of people, especially. I mean, even if it is just released 6 or 7 months down the road after E3 is over, because you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
It's at E3, and I've seen this, and I think it's also important to bridge that gap between March and October when we have that dry season to get excited about things.
Second E3.
First E3, second E3. If E3, if tomorrow they announced that E3 was canceled this year, I do think that it would adversely affect sales.
Yes.
Because it is such a relied upon spectacle. So does the industry need it? Yeah, it does. But it's kind of like you need a leg, right? You use it to walk. But if that leg is suddenly removed, as painful as that would be, you can get something to replace it. You can still be mobile, and you can still get to where you're going, and you can still be successful. And I think that's where E3 sort of sits. in the gaming industry, is that it is integral but not essential.
Well said.
Very well said.
And on that
Last Guardian was announced in 2009.
And it will be at E3 this year.
It will be.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll be joining you. Well, you'll be joining us next week. We haven't thought of what topic that'll be, but tune in next week and we'll see what we got.
got a whole week to make it up.
Good night.
Yeah.
Later.